Steve Belly here, and just going to show you how we put this 4Runner super high clearance bumper together. It came together really nicely. Got this done in a few days for Bradley from Kansas, so he didn't have to stick around too long, but it worked out really well. He saw my rig, wanted the same deal in terms of all the stuff on it except the fuel carrier. He wanted a table instead, so I'm going to show you the specifics of all that and stick around for the video, and I'll show you exactly how I built it. Good morning, Steve Belly here, and today it's early. I think it's 5 o'clock. It's start there. And I'm excited. I'm working on a 2007 Limited SR5 4Runner. This is a vehicle from Kansas. Friend Bradley Myers came on down yesterday, drove 12 and a half hours to drop this truck off here for a few days so I can work on it. And I'm going to actually do the same thing that I did on my bumper, my 2007 4Runner. It's dark, so you can't really see it, but we're going to show you that later. But right now we're going to do that exact same setup. We are going to cut out this entire cross member here, replace it with a 3x2 rectangular tube across the top, put some round tubing around the corners here, and put a tire swing out over here. And maybe if I have time, I'll even going to build a table on there as well. So let's get at it. Here we go. So first thing I'm going to do here is take off the bumper. Boring, not going to show you that. There's two little 8mm bolts that were up in here on this guy, and a whole whack load of 10mm bolts that are going to be up in these little connectors. There's one up in here too that you got to get out on each side, and then there's one up in here, and maybe one up in here as well, on each side as well. Oh, there it is, here and up in here. So got to get those out. Once you've got those out, then that whole bumper just pops off. Just grip it at the front, pull it off, comes off around here, push it out. It's up there in the garage. We're actually fitting this build in amongst selling my house, so my garage has never been this neat. It's pretty awesome. Epoxy coated the floor the other day. Looks great. Of course, I did some spray painting, so I have a nice little outline of spray painting outside the cardboard. But obviously it's 5 o'clock in the morning, so I can't start grinding and cutting things right now. So I'm just getting prepped up. But I like to see what I'm working with. So what I'm going to be doing is cutting this frame member off here. So I'm going to cut it across the back part here with my Sawzall, my reciprocating saw, and then use the cut-off wheel to cut along here and down here and across the bottom, and then I just cut up through the back here, and this whole thing will fall off. Do that on each side, and then what I'm going to do is angle this forward right through this line here, through this circle, and just in front of these bolt holes here, in case everyone wants to use these to put on a hitch. I'm gonna take off this resonator. I'm gonna cut it just in front of the resonator there. Cut off this hanger. I'll just push these bumper cover hangers up. Not that he's ever gonna use them again, but just if I don't have to cut something, then I don't have to expose a raw edge. Do that on each side. But this centerpiece is just gonna come away. And then I'm gonna save the bumper cover. We're gonna cut it across the top here, probably about here. It's 1 3/4 inch tubing. It's going to come in level with this tube here. This 3x2 inch rectangular tubing across the top. It's going to come out here and around to here, and then I'm going to have another one that's going to come out from here and angle down and come down through here. You'll see that on mine later. And then probably put a connector piece in here, and then maybe, depending on how it's looking, maybe one up into the side here of the frame. That'll secure that really nicely, and then we can mount the Hinge bracket or hinge support on the end of that 3x2 tubing that's going to come out to about here. And then I put the hinge just outside the door here. So that's how that's going to roll. And build that out far enough that I can get a table in behind it. So it's going to hang out a bit, but you'll have a table that'll be super useful, so that'll be good. I'm just going to recreate this bend here. So I'm going to put a little bend on the ends of each of those to recreate this slight curve here. I believe that's 2 feet. Yeah, that's about 2 feet, so that'll be perfect. So I'll just do a slight curve on the end of each of these, of this tube here. And that'll be good for the tops on those two. And then I'll put a 90-degree curve on this guy as well, while I'm waiting for it to get a little lighter or later as well. And then take out whatever support pieces I need out of here and then put the rest back in there. Do this. I have all the pieces cut to rough length and mill scale, flash rust off them. I am gonna wipe them down with some acetone. Actually, I need to get some more acetone. I'm almost out. So wipe them down with acetone, spread them out on some cardboard, and get the primer on those. That'll dry real fast here at the heat. And I'm gonna start working on cutting that rear cross member out, angling those plates as the primer's drying. Get that into the right angle, cut the resonator off, weld on a plate onto the back end here on that angle. I think I'm going to go with putting the recovery points on the inside of the frame, or maybe I might put them on the face. I'm not sure, haven't decided yet. So a couple options, but we're going to lop this sucker off, and I think we're moving along pretty nicely. We got the pieces all cut roughly to length. I gotta cut them individually still, but they're all primered up. Let those dry. That's gonna make it a lot easier later. I don't have to worry about getting all that flash rust off them because they've been welded into place for a couple days. So that's gonna be good. Once I cut them to the final length, and I'll just sand down the ends a little bit for the welding, and I think that's going to work well. So next is cutting out this cross member. It's noisy, it's messy, but we're going to get it done. Here we go. think on mine I have mine cut a little bit farther forward, but with this one we're going to put a table on, so I'm going to move it back just a smidge, move the whole deal back a tad. And I'm gonna go with recovery points on the inside, so it's gonna cover up that hole over there on the inside of the frame. Once I get all this cut off, then I might go through and trim up some of the rest of this bit that I've cut off. So I just wanted to get that center member out of the way, and then I can deal with everything once it's open like this. So, and then we're gonna drop the 3x2 tubing down a little bit, so we're gonna cut along that line, and you know, wherever I decide to put the 3x2, cut it down there as well. But we'll work on this first. Okay, so what I did here is took this line, got my marker, and just drew a line across the bottom. And then with my ruler, held that up to this line here and across to the top line, air cut, and then looked at through the inside there, and I could see, make sure it's parallel to the cut that I've got on the other side, and then just draw my line. And there, oh, I gotta bring that up a little bit on the bottom, if you can see that. Same thing on this side. And then just get it parallel. Make sure it's pretty even. Once I get it pretty close, I can always shave it down a smidge with a sander later. Okay, now we're going to cut out the top piece here that we're going to rest the 3x2 onto. I've done that on the other side already, and we're just going to mark it off here, square across the top. It's about 2 centimeters down from the top. That's the depth that I want. Then the same on the other side here, and again I can always shift it up and down a little bit to get it level, and cut in across the top here. Make sure you have a nice full blade. It'll get the nice deep depth of cut that you're looking for. It's going to bring this back a little smidge from the end here, but it's going to allow I've got 3 inches from the top here, and the top of that tube is 3 inches from the back here. And then what I'm going to do is have the tube is going to stick out just a smidge here, so I'll be able to get a good weld in across the top with the plate. So the next step, we're going to square all this up. We got to cut this piece off here on the side, drop the plate down, or the tubing down onto the top, get that plate on there. We're going to use a 3/16 inch plate, and then we're going to weld the recovery points onto the inside here to cover up this hole as well. It's coming along nice. I like it. Okay, I like the cuts here. They look really good. They're tight. So we're going to be able to sand all the frame down all the way around this bird's mouth here and weld that into place. I'm going to have the shackle mount come through here, and I'm going to weld a 3/16 inch thick plate on here. This is a 65-degree angle here, and I'm 10 1/4 inches outside the frame here. So that edge here is 10 1/4 inches from the outside. Did that on both sides, so now I'm going to cut this off here on each side, And the reason I've got it at a little angle here is the tubing is going to come in around. Since I've already done this on my truck, I'll show you. So we're going to cut it across here like that, and then this is just going to butt into it. Just cutting it at an angle makes it, I think it looks a little smoother. So anyways, that's where we're at right now. Pop that on the miter saw in a second. And then I'm going to take the primer off all the way around the bottom here. Take it off on the frame as well, and then weld that into place. So there's the angle, there's the way it looks across the back here, and then the bumper cover platform is going to still come out across there. If you take a look at the door, it'll bumper cover is going to come out level with that. We'll cut it out so that way when you open the door you still have the cover there. It'll go up and seal all this off and make it look nice. So what I've done here is measured out or marked off where I want to sand this out. So I want to sand all the primer off here so I can weld it into here. I'm going to sand the paint off this bracket frame as well, or the frame. Do the same on both sides. Might as well sand the ends of these as well, and then the top part here. And then also sand the top part here where we're going to be welding this post onto, and then the top and the bottom as well. Actually, I might as well sand this whole face here because we're going to be putting the brackets for the hinge on there. Okay, next I'm going to be cutting off these little hinge brackets, drilling the hole in there for the spindle of the hinge, and I might as well, actually I'll do that later. That's going to be my template for the tire plate. So I'm just going to cut these off and then drill the holes on the drill press in there and get that done. So let's get this ready. This is working. So we've got the top of the board here clamped into the main cross beam, whatever. I'm just going to tack this into place because I like the height there, and then I'm going to level out that bottom platform for the hinge and then weld in the top one, and then we are ready to start working on the swing arms. We have the bottom bracket welded in, and now I want to get the right height for the top. So now I'm gonna center this left to right. Got it all into position. I like it. Okay, I'm gonna weld that into place, and now I can move on to the swing arm. Okay, I'm just gonna show you how I cope out the end of the swing arm here. So this is one side that I've already done. What I'll do is I'll just grab this hinge cylinder, put it on there. I'm gonna, I don't know if you can see that, but I'm going to put it just inside the walls of the tubing. Like that, so you can see the line comes down, just not to the edge, but to the inside edge on each side. I'm going to cut this part out. So what I'm going to do is just line that up like this, just on the inside edge of the tubing, and then get a Sharpie, mark that end, and then I'm going to cut out just little slots and then cut around. I'll show you the process. There's a bunch of other videos that do that, but I'll show you how I do this. And then I just fit the hinge in there, make sure it's perpendicular to the swing arm, and then we are good to go. And stick it into the, weld the hinge into the actual swing arm. And then once I've got that welded in, then I can put the bushings in, because I can't put those in until I finish welding this onto the swing arm, because the bushings are oil impregnated, and if it's hot when if they're in there, there's a little bushing there. that bushing is in the swing arm hinge, when I start welding it, it will blow all that oil right over the bushing. So I don't know how they impregnate oil into that steel, but that's how they do it. Anyways, let me show you how this works. So I'm going to take the hinge collar here, put that in there, and make sure I like the position of it. That looks good. I don't see a lot of gaps in there. It's pretty sweet. And then I'm going to get a square and make sure that the whole swing arm deal is perpendicular to the actual hinge itself. Okay, the top a little further in than the bottom, so I'm going to flip it upside down here, and I'm going to shave off the top part just a little bit. Let's see, I've probably got a little high point, yeah, right in the middle here. So I'm just going to shave that off a bit more, and that'll fit a little bit more cleanly. This is now perpendicular to the swing arm, which is great. And what I'm going to be able to do now is weld that in. So I'm going to take the mill scale off this hinge, weld it into place. I'm going to again make sure I get the seam here, as you can see, on the back part of the swing arm. So try and remember that. And then I'm going to have about 1/4 of an inch or so on the bottom, so I can get a good weld in there, and the rest is going to be above. So I'm going to get that done, and then we can get this welded and let it start cooling so I can get that bushing in there, the 2 bushings. This is looking really good because we're putting a table in here, and I've got this hinge out a smidge. However, it's not out far enough. I could probably get away with having it there, and it actually might fit, but especially because we're going to put a table in there, it's got to come out even further. So what I'm going to do is put a little angle here. It's going to come out there and then angle across. I'm just going to take out a little piece of pie, a pie-shaped piece of, we're going to angle it out here and take a little piece of pie shaped steel out of there. I'll show you over here kind of what it's going to look like. Just have it jog out a tad like that, and then angle in, and then that gives us lots of room in behind to pop a table. I left some room here in the future in case I wanted to put something, so that's why that's out like that. And we're gonna do the same thing on Bradley's swing arm, and that is gonna give us the room we're looking for. We need about 1.25 inches behind here for the table, because it's a 3/4 inch square tubing and a 1/2 inch tabletop, so 1.25 inches. And then I want to always have at least 1/2 inch out from the truck, so maybe 3/4 of an inch, so 1.25 inches, so 2 inches. So I need to have the back of that swing arm, this thing here, 2 inches from the furthest part back, which is probably going to be this part here, because I think the swing arm, or the table rather, it's going to be at least 18 inches, it's going to potentially up to 18 inches. So it could come up to there. So I want to have it 2 inches behind here. So I got to figure out, okay, what's the vertical position of this here, and then this front edge of this swing arm has to be 2 inches behind where this is, and so I got to jog that out. So let's do that, and I'll show you how I get that done. Here. So there's the back edge of the swing arm, or the leading edge of the swing arm. There's the back. Come back down here. There's 2 inches. I could have done the same thing there, but so we've got a mark there. And so now what I've got to figure out is, okay, what's this angle here? What's this angle here, along here and there? So there's 79 degrees, 79 degrees. So we're going to cut this out. I'm going to do my speed square there, draw a straight line down on either side, on here as well, connect all the lines on the other side, cut that out, pull it together, weld it, put it back on the truck. What it's going to look like right before you get going with cutting that slice out. We'll cut that out, show you how that works. It's all cut, just pull that out. That's hot. There we go. So I'm going to bend that. The shorter this is, the harder it is to bend. Usually what I'll do is just stick it on the ground, stand on it, crank on this end, get it close together. Once that's done, I'm going to sand this off, these bits here, and put a couple spot welds on here, and then get it back onto the swing arm or the hinge and see how it looks. Okay, so now you'll see that that's got that bend, and there's that 2 inches down there. It's right in where I want it. It's parallel, I can measure it. Make sure we're same distance out here. So it's 2 inches behind there, 2 inches behind there. So we are good. That worked out really well. So now I can weld this together because I like the way that is. Happy with the height on that. That looks good. Yep. And then I'll be able to weld all this together. So I'm going to weld this, weld that, and then let it cool, put the bushings in, then crank this hinge tight before I start doing anything further in terms of putting stops in and such. So, and I've done this a bunch, so I think I'm going to be good here. If in doubt though, just put a couple of tack welds onto your hinge brackets in case you have to cut those out later to reposition them, shift them a little bit or whatever. So let's get this stuff all welded up and then get those bushings in after it cools down, which will take a little bit. And in the meantime, what I can probably do is actually start measuring for the tire carrier neck, or post rather, and then the support posts as well. That are going to come out of there. Or I could even cap the ends of the cross beam here and start working on the round tubing, because it's going to take a while for that hinge to cool down so I can put the bushings in there. So we'll do all that. I'll see which I'm going to do next. So that's all welded together. Good with that. And now I think I'm going to work on the tire post. Get that all dialed in, I think. This short one here is the 20-inch one. And that's going to be pretty close to what I want for the height. Obviously, the end's not cut square, so I'll have to fix that. But we'll get the tire up to there. And then build the supports in off the sides here. And then I think I'm probably going to do like a 1.5-inch tubing up to the side on the ends wherever I take this one to, and that'll be for the table. So leave room for that. Get that sorted out and then get that in. So I got the tire post cut. So this is going to be about 20 inches high up to here, and I'll shave the top down there. Just making sure it's square. Got 2 inches, just a smidge over 2 inches from the back door, so it's got plenty of room for the table in there. And I like to clamp the faces down here. I like to clamp back and front face of the tubing here onto this, so when I put the tack welds in there, I know it's flush, because that drives me crazy if I'm not paying attention and that slides off a bit. So let's just tack this into place, and then I'm going to work on the tire plate, wherever I put that, over here. Start getting that ready to go. Because then what I want to do is weld that into the lug bolts into the tire plate after I drill the holes, obviously, and then put it into the tire. And then I can start to figure out, okay, what's the back space on that tire? How far out do I want it to be so I can get maximum amount of I guess depth for the table. How far out do I want the tire to be so I can figure out how high I can get the tire, because that's gonna, or the table, because that's gonna dictate where the tire is in relation to this post. The tighter I get it, the closer it's gonna be to the back door, which is great. However, it's gonna decrease the amount that I can bring the table up here on this post. And I'm gonna put a 1.5-inch tubing here and another one on that end, and that's gonna dictate the length of the table. So there we go. So far this morning we've got the tire post all in. I like the angle of that. It's going to give us just about 2 inches clearance from the back of the door here, so the table is going to fit in there nicely. Just welded this block in here. I'm going to weld in a bottom, a 1.5-inch square tubing across the bottom here as a press, so that blocks this swing arm down as I'm cranking it down with the new bolt lever latch. I'll put a kind of a fin across here, or maybe a ridge on here. Actually, maybe a little ridge across here. Yeah, I like that idea better. I'm going to put a little ridge across here so that 1.5-inch block bumps into that and stops it from going any further. So that'll be a nice stop for the there. Or I'll put a fin down here. I like the ridge here better though. It's a cleaner look on the back. And then the lever is going to go here, the catch is going to go there, and I'll put some supports down here. We'll get that neck on here, and maybe a gusset as well for support, and the tire plate. I just welded that up so that it's cooling, it is hot. Get away from my electrical cord. And then we can get going on the square tubing, or the round tubing, to connect that to the side corner there. And this 2-inch tubing here is going to be for the angled supports in the neck for the tire carrier. So next step, let me think. Let's finish off this tire carrier. So I'm going to sand down the primer here, put the supports in. I'm going to use some 1.5 inch tubing here, not just for the bottom press here or spacer gap, but also for the posts for the table. I'll put them there and there. But I'll do that after I get the tire in, so I can figure out exactly how deep I can make the table. And then the hinges for the table are going to get welded into the back of the swing arm then. So that's next. Supports for the tire carrier. And all I'm just going to do is clamp the sides here. I want to make sure they're flush with the post and not jogged off to the side. Once those are tacked into place, as I'm tacking those in, I'll just hold this over, make sure I got it flush, and then once that's good, then I'll put the block in and the latch. With that set, we got the hook over here welded in. That's a stop block. Now though, I want to pull all that off because I want to cut the bumper cover, fit that into place before I start welding in the corner tubes. Because I don't want to have the corner tubes put into the wrong position and then put the cover on and realize, So let's put the cover back on, cut it in half though so I can get it over everything. And I think if I just cut it down along this line here and just a little past the black line, I can take that off with acetone later if it's in a part that I'm leaving. But I believe I'm going to be cutting it up about another inch higher. But I'm going to get it close for now. Okay, so I got it rough cut, and now I'm going to fine tune it that it's on here. A lot easier to do it that way. So this is 11.5 inches from the top. I think that's what I'm going to go with the height of the bar. Actually, I'm going to take it a little higher than that, just because I want to keep it a little bit away from the bar so it's not rubbing. So I'm probably going to go like like 11 inches from the top here. Maybe 11 and a quarter, probably 11. Maybe a little bit, 11 and an eighth, I think. Just between 11 and 11 and a quarter. So 11 and a half is where the bar is going to be, because that's the height of the rear tube here. It's 11.5 inches down from the top. I've done the same thing on the other side. And then across the back, because this bar is back a bit more than mine, I was going to cut it right even with the door, but I think what I'm going to do is cut it, for now at least, even with the back of the cross beam, and then I can always cut it a bit farther forward later. So there's the cutout for the hinge over there. This side doesn't have a hinge, so I'm going to have to angle it across because I don't want to mess with this post. So I think I'll just angle it from where I cut it underneath across to here, and then just slide it down there. I think that'll work. Let's do that. Marked up. When I'm cutting along the side panels here, I like to put the tape on. Just keeps me on track, and then I can just cut a little off the tape and know I'm in the right spot. And then it also is easy to line up and make sure you like the lines too. Sometimes the black marker, it's a little jagged, as you can see, but the tape is pretty consistent, so I like the way that looks. Okay, we get the bumper cover cut for the most part. Might trim it up a little later. Here's the transition on this corner. I think that's okay. Like the way that sort of settles in across the top there. We can always cut this back along here later and then bring it back. I'll ask Bradley, that's easy to do at the time, and he can just pick it up. Now we're gonna cap these ends with a 10 gauge plate on each side, just because we're gonna be welding into it, and then start welding in the round tubing. Let's get doing that. Okay, let's catch up to speed on where we're at now. I just jammed through a bunch of stuff yesterday and I didn't bother picking up the phone to record things because I wanted to get this done as much as possible yesterday and then finish it off today. So Bradley can take it back to Kansas tomorrow, and I can't remember what I videotaped to before, but we'll kind of go over things and measurements and lengths, angles, and things like that. So as you can see, I've got a couple different colors of primer. I like to get the primer on now at night as much as I can before, because consistently, especially if it would build like this when I'm leaving it on the truck overnight, I come out and it's just got all this flash rust on it because it's so humid here. So anyways, here's the angle tubing that we've got for the corners. So what I have to do still on this bumper is weld in the stop pin onto the swing arm and then add in the holes for the stop locations. But right now we've got the I guess the end plates on the frame rails, and then I added on the side recovery points. And the reason I added those onto the side here of the frame is this frame was cut a little bit farther back to allow for the table. And so what I've done is it had that big hole on the side. So I just used this recovery point and welded it right into the side. So that covered up that hole nicely. And so we've got about it's like a 10-degree angle or so here for this one that comes down. This top tube just comes straight out the side. It's about 2 feet long and it just goes right to the end of the wheel well. So when I was measuring this and making sure I got the right height, I put the bumper cover back on the truck. As I showed you yesterday, cut the height that I wanted. It was about a ½ an inch above this tube here. Same distance all the way along, so it's level. And held it into place, so I had that ½ inch gap. And then just started tack welding it in around there. And then once I've got that into place, then I put this one in. And I just wanted it to come in underneath on each side, underneath this pinch weld here. Little trick here to get in, and then as you can see up, I've got a support tube here that goes up into the frame. So that just makes this whole mechanism so strong. It's like amazingly strong. And then I just angled this one forward because we've got that baffle that comes out here. So if I had it come out straight, it would bump into the bottom of the baffle because I want to get it as tight as possible. But I actually like the way that looks with it angled like that. Done the same to the other side here. So we've got that all in place. Welded in right to the end of the frame here, or into this one here. And then I put on these brush guards, again making sure that I had the bumper cover on first, get the right angle. I think, what are they at? I can't remember what angle. 135, I think, from here. I think it's 135 degrees from that. So anyways, was that 45 degrees, I guess? 35? Can't remember. And so these are, as you can see, a bit of a angle. So cutting the coping on those, it's a little trickier. But I got a really good tight cut on them. So that worked out really well. Added this little stop here for the swing arm. So that's gonna, swing arm just swings right in there. I'll show you that later. But this is all ready to go. So I just have to put the stop pin on to the swing arm, add in some holes to lock it closed, or lock it into a position for opening up the door, and then fully open. So I'm probably gonna have I think I like having the swing arm or the pin on the inside of the swing arm if I can do it. And then, so I'll have a hole location around here for the open position so I can get the back door open, and then probably another one around here somewhere where the whole swing arm comes out and the tire stops just before getting to the taillight. So here's our swing arm, and then what we'll do here is I'm going to cap the ends of the, I got to cap the stop block here, ends and the end of the swing arm and the top of these table carriers. And then once I've got those done and that stop pin's welded into position, then I can actually start coating this with some enamel. And that is all done. And then I'm just working on the table. So here's the tabletop material. I'm gonna cut that to length and width. And then I've got the hinges down in here in the snap clips. They're gonna lock the table onto these posts. So yeah, pretty close to being done. I think by midday today, I should be able to get to that point where I'm coating everything finally, and then let it cure this afternoon and into tomorrow morning, and then kind of early in the day tomorrow, kind of mid-morning, I guess. Bradley, I'll be able to drive this machine back to Kansas. So here we go. Okay, we got this all capped up. We're good here. Put a little gusset in the neck of the tire carrier, so that's good. And then what I've done is here for the stop location is just obviously move the swing arm to where I need it to be to have the tire on there and be able to open up the back door. And instead of making a big plate here and trying to drill the holes in them after the fact, what I'm going to do, at least for this build, probably in the future as well, because it worked well, is just take a little tab of steel, drill a hole in it on the drill press, and then put the pin in there, move the steel around so it's in the right spot, tack it into place with the welder, and then weld it in, smooth all that out. Same thing over here. It actually stops over here on its own, but I want to make sure that he can lock it into position. So just out there, back just a smidge from the stop part there. And then I like to leave it like this as well, because that way if that latch ever undoes for whatever reason, then the tire carrier is going to stop here as he's going down the road, because that pin is going to be extended and it's going to hit that piece of steel there. So we're all set. So now we're working on the table. So I've got some 3/4 inch tubing, and I have a polyethylene cutting board here that I'm going to use as the top. I had to get some more 3/4 inch tubing, so I had to run out this morning and get that. We're just going to cut these into 35 inches in length. It's 35 1/4 inches from the outside corners here, but I'm just going to have a little smidge inside so that the the catch goes on there, maybe a little, maybe 35 1/8. So it's just a hair inside. I just don't want it to be outside. And then 14 1/2 inches from the base to the top. So that's going to be the size of the table. And that'll fit inside the tire. I'll throw that tire back on there just to make sure, but hold a piece of steel up across the back here, make sure it's not touching the tire. And then we're going to get busy making this table. But I have a phone call to do in a minute, so I'm going to do that and then I'll be back. Right on, we got all the pieces cut. These are just 3/4 inch square tubing. And I've got some, let me pick them up here, little 16 gauge pieces of triangular steel here. Come on, there we go. Then I'm going to put on the corners, and I'm going to put that all on there. We're going to weld everything together first, tack these on, sand down the welds here, put those on, weld it in quick. And then on the other side is going to be the cutting board. And I'm going to, actually no, the cutting board is going to be on top here, sorry. And then I'm going to put a bolt through the cutting board and then a little nut on the other side of it that's going to pull the cutting board down onto this. So the cutting board's held on by these 4 bolts and these plates, going to go in each corner. And then I'm going to have the hinges out in this area somewhere on each side, and that's going to go weld into the back part of the swing arm here. One of the things you want to make sure that you do is don't place the hinge where this is going to be. So probably outside is going to be a good place for the hinge, outside corners here, and then have those other braces in the middle, because you need the barrel of the hinge to fit in here. If you have it here, it's going to jam into that spot. So anyways, let's get at it. Okay, we got the table all done. I'm going to start to weld that into place. So I just welded these little triangles into the top of the table.
after smoothing all the welds down. And then, as you can see on the other side here, just a little set screw, hex bolt, nut, whatever, nut, bolt thing. These are weldable hinges, so I've got a 40 millimeter stainless steel bolt through here. It's an M6. And so this is going to get bolted to the table, so if you ever want to take the table off, it's just these 2 bolts on each hinge. These are M6 nut nuts, and now we're just going to weld it into place, and then once that's done, I'm going to put the catch on, weld it into the top of the post here, and hook onto the frame of the table. Pull everything off, start the coating process, pull the top off from that frame, start coating that, and then it should be done later today, and you can take it home tomorrow. The table is all done. We got that all welded in, and the the clasps into place on each side. It's pretty sturdy. I don't know what the weight limit is on this, but those are 250-pound hinges, and they're bolted into this steel frame pretty nicely. So I'm saying it's pretty strong. Strong enough to put anything that you're going to want to put on there for cooking and such. So anyways, there we go. I think we're all done. I'm going to check my notes, make sure I got everything, but I think it's time to take everything apart and start coating it. Okay, here's the final product of the Kansas rig. So this is Bradley from Kansas, came down. We got him all set up with this super high clearance rear bumper. He saw mine and wanted the same thing, so we got that all set up and it came together really nicely. A couple of quick changes. I haven't gotten around to putting brush bars on mine. He wanted those on his, and he wanted a drop down table instead of a fuel carrier. So we did that as well. So let's take you on a quick tour of it all. It's dripping a little bit because we just washed it down. But we've got the bumper cover cut up. It was probably down here. We cut it up quite a bit. And this really increases the departure angle to about 40 degrees. And it looks really clean. We took off the resonator, as you can see. Did that on mine as well. And we just did a couple of adjustments, I guess you could say. So we took out the center cross member here, replaced it with a 3x2 3/16 inch thick steel tube. I cut down into the frame, welded the snot out of that all around here, and then added in some 1 3/4 inch round tubing around the corner. So angled this piece here, bent that out there. So these are about 2 feet each, and little connector pieces up here. This is super solid. You can move the whole truck back and forth with just reefing on that. It's not moving at all, so that's pretty awesome. And we cut the back bumper cover off right up to the tube there. On this side, we've got a couple of stop positions. I'll show you those in a minute. And then the bumper cover comes in nice. I was able to save half of the mud guard there and just cut it off on the bottom. Make it nice and clean. That looks good, I like it. And let's see, what else? Light wired in a LED license plate light. Just a couple little riv nuts up in here into the bumper. And here's the U lever latch. Pull that back. And so this is going to come open a little bit until the pin hits there. And I like to build it that way so that if that latch ever came open on the highway or whatever, this whole mechanism, this whole swing arm is not going to swing wide open and take out a car. So once you got to that point, just lift it up there, drop it into the pin location there, and then the door will open. Got nice clearance. So that's awesome. And then the drop down table, just a couple little clips here. And that'll come down here. And it is nice and strong. So it's like really solid. These are 250-pound 90-degree hinges. So I like using those. And yeah, he can load just about anything he wants onto that. I was sitting on the swing arm before I put the tire post on, so it is super strong. I've got a double shear hinge design in here. So another 3/16 inch thick 3x2 rectangular tube welded to the top of this one, and there's a 1/4 inch steel plate for the brackets. for the hinge pin. And put some Loctite in the bolt and then the pin threads. So that's all set. And that's a nice surface for working on. This is a great little step here for getting up onto the roof if you need it. And then this whole mechanism here swings wide open all the way out to there. And there's a stop location just short of the tail light. So if he wants, he can set up stuff inside the back of his truck, have a nice wide swing arm that he can work on. I think this looks great. Super functional and making me think I want a table on mine. Anyways, that happens a lot when I'm doing a build for somebody. Anyways, there we go. There's the build. There's the specifics of all the features and such. And yeah, stick around for more videos. Subscribe and like if you're interested in seeing more about this stuff.
Thank you so much. Off-Road Grind, Stephen Bentley. This is the best work I've ever seen. Just amazing. Got the swing out and the table all done in less than a week. Sweet. Boy, oh boy.